If you're one of those people who genuinely thinks your life's problems are super rare, like you might be the only human on earth dealing with this stuff, and they're so complex you figure solving them is impossible, this video is gonna help you out. This is the rundown of chapter 3 from Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. For this video, you gotta get ready as usual and grab whatever drink you're into. Welcome to the Cortexon channel, where we've got coffee, music, and books. I'm with you, Cortexon. The whole point of this channel, to make a long story short, is that I read a book, explain it, and review it. Nah, not just review it. I give a full explanation so you get the benefits of reading without actually having to read. Manson keeps dropping serious knowledge, just like he did in chapter 1 and chapter 2. And in this chapter, he hits on a topic, my friend, that's one of the most dangerous and common issues out there. I'm positive you've dealt with people like this in your life. He starts this chapter with a story about his friend. He says he had a friend named Jimmy. That's a fake name, not the real guy's. He says this Jimmy was super positive. He was always hustling in the world of business and projects. For example, if you asked him what he was working on, he'd hit you with answers like giving you the name of a corporation and saying he was their consultant, or he'd tell you about an awesome medical app idea he'd cooked up, or he'd let you in on some major event about to go down that he was the official spokesperson for. He says this Jimmy was always busy, and as soon as you opened up a simple conversation, he'd flood you with sentences flexing about his success, his genius, his energy, and his positivity. He says when you were hanging with him, it felt like you were chilling with one of the greatest people who ever lived. Cool, awesome, my friend, but honestly and sadly, Jimmy was straight up delusional by every definition of the word. Yeah, my friend Jimmy was a fraud. All the businesses, projects, ideas, innovations, and stuff he was talking about were just talk. Zero success, zero substance. The guy had tons of phrases he used to boast, and he spent way more cash on going out than he did on his so-called projects. He was an owner and a boss, you know? He was the type of dude who'd sweet talk you out of money, playing on the work you put in. He'd feed them a couple of lines and take their cash, making it sound like he had a project, an idea, or whatever. Nope, no project, no idea, nothing. And he pulled the same stuff with his buddies. He'd sit with them and convince them he had 1 or 2 big projects, they'd invest their dough, and he'd disappear. And the biggest disaster, my friend, is that Jimmy totally believed his life was all that. He thought everything he did was right, even positive, and he saw himself as a huge success. He's not talking about a fictional character, my friend. This type of person is totally real. I bet you have 2 or 3 people like that in your life, my friend. There are people out there who think they are legends, but in reality, they are straight up, and excuse me for using this word, deadbeats. You gotta stay away from those kinds of people. He says, look, if you've got guts, drop this harsh truth on them. If you're brave enough to tell a person who thinks they're successful, but is really just failing a lot that they're wrong, they'll turn on you and call you jealous, spiteful, or say you're hating on their success. Just check out that mindset. If you try to argue with them about it, they'll just say, it's those haters who don't want me to succeed because they're failures themselves. That's Jimmy, my friend. Mark then goes on a bit and says that Jimmy might be one of those people influenced by the self-help craze back in the 60s. Back then, it was common for them to pump you up with positivity about yourself. They saw that as a form of self-improvement. They were basically putting ideas in your head, and by the way, this type of self-help is what Stephen Covey talks about in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about the ideas that make you look at yourself so positively that you live in a delusion, totally separate from reality. The only thing that mattered was having positive thoughts about yourself. I'm successful, I exist. I'm an innovator, and so on, regardless of your reality and whether the things you're actually doing are positive or successful. He says that in many cases, this makes a person genuinely believe, deep down, that they're 99.99% successful most of the time. He says true self-help leads you to the kind of positivity that actually shows up in your actions, the kind that makes you look at the negative aspects, acknowledge them, and work on them. It makes you admit to the weak points you have and fix and develop them so that your actions ultimately become successful in the real world. True self-help makes you look at the negative stuff you have and the mistakes you made in past experiences, before it makes you look at the positive sides you have. That is real self-improvement. But the kind of self-help that just fills you with positivity about yourself will not create people like Bill Gates or Martin Luther King. Instead, it will create more and more of those annoying, parasitic types, like Jimmy, my friend. He says, but the bright side and the cool thing is that the truth must always win out in the end. The belief that you are successful is eventually going to hit the wall of reality, and it's going to slap you in the face, my friend. You're going to realize you're not successful, you're not accomplished, you're not talented, you're not fighting a battle, and you're not being hated on. You just failed to realize the truth, my friend. Reality has to win, and that's the best part about the existence of truth. Honestly, my friend, the people like Jimmy and others who are similar, I talked about a character like Joe in another video who was a manager who didn't know the first thing about management. I hope he sees this video, even though it might get to him through people telling him that I like him to be on the channel. Anyway, I hope with all my heart that he sees this, because as soon as he does, he'll know for a fact that I'm talking about him. Seriously, guys and girls, he was the manager over me, and I ended up quitting because that person is living in a delusion in his mind, a mental framework that is so tough to break. It's impossible to convince him. Man, he's past the stage of being infallible, saints. He's always right. We're the ones who are wrong. We're the ones who aren't capable. We're the ones who don't work well. We're the ones whose ideas are lacking. We're the ones whose plans always fail. We're talking about things that are real, on the ground, but he literally doesn't see the scale of the damage he's causing. Yeah, I swear. I'm not exaggerating the degree of damage, but that's enough, my friend. I swear, my friend, I swear. And this person still, to this day, thinks he was a great achiever. That person, God knows, is an example of what God Almighty says. Those whose effort is lost in this world's life, while they think that they are doing good work. I swear to God, that verse perfectly describes his situation, at least professionally. Sorry, but just one last thing, my friend. Allow me to send a message. Maybe he'll actually watch this video and hear this painful truth. I'm going to follow up on the topic we talked about in the last part, and I'm going to drop the shocking, harsh, electrifying truth on him, which I know he'll end up saying is just me being spiteful and jealous. The real talk is, I swear to God, baby, if you're living in an environment that deludes you into thinking you're successful, trust me, you're a failure. And in reality, you're a failure. Your actions were failures. I don't care if you say I'm spiteful or I'm jealous of you. Sorry for the intense language, but honestly, this situation is super dangerous. Watch out, my friend, that you don't become that person, that joke, like Manson calls it in this chapter. Be careful not to think you're an extraordinary person who never makes mistakes, who isn't affected, whose experiences are always successful, and who has no flaws. Beware of becoming a copy of Jimmy. This is the point Mark makes in the second section of this chapter. To be honest, and just to be clear, some of the philosophies Mark Manson put forward about the topic of exceptionalism in general, I don't agree with them. I'm one of those people who won't just say I disagree without telling you why. I'll tell you why I disagree. Maybe this takes up some time, so I'd rather you just take the info from this chapter yourself. Stand me. If I say I disagree, it doesn't mean I'm against him, not at all. But I don't agree with what he says, but the important, cool thing he said about exceptionalism in this chapter is that this exceptionalism has two ends. You could be so extreme about exceptionalism that you think you're above the world, better than everyone else, superior to everyone, and completely flawless, without any errors or defects. This kind of exceptionalism, he says, makes you ignore your problems. Or maybe you'll deny all your problems and the negative aspects in you or your actions, which won't help you solve or fix them. We agreed in the last part. You can go back and watch that episode if you missed it, because it's super important, that solving problems is important.
If you see yourself as so exceptional that you're above your problems or free of them, you won't be able to solve them, and you won't achieve the goal we talked about when we defined and understood exceptionalism. This exceptionalism is for the moronic people like Jimmy, and I called them morons, not because they're actually morons, but because they are morons, they know they are living a lie, and they totally deny that lie.
I mean, if they were unaware of it, it would be one thing, but they know about the delusion and are fine with it. The second side of exceptionalism is the one I really liked, a whole new perspective, my friend. You might be exceptional, but on the flip side of exceptionalism, the total opposite of Jimmy, who thought he was above the world, you see yourself as less than the world. You see yourself as the only victim in the universe, the one who carries rare problems that no one else has gone through, problems that are so complex that solving them seems impossible. And you say, I'm the only one whose life is so messed up and complicated, and I'm the only one who, no matter how hard I try to succeed, my path isn't smooth like that guy's or that girl's. And you start looking at other people's successes and saying, they're successful because they don't have the problems I have. He says if you live on this other side of exceptionalism, you're just another version of Jimmy, but the failure is the exact opposite. Never think you're special, not in Jimmy's way and not in the other way. Never think you're the only person who doesn't have problems or who has complex problems that are hard to solve. Never. You have to admit and accept your problems and your negative sides. You have to admit and accept that you are not exceptional and that many people have the same problems you're going through. I'm sure you're not like Jimmy, my friend. But maybe sometimes, because our problems are so intense, we fall into this other side of exceptionalism. This side is dangerous, my friend. This side is going to make you give up and stop trying to solve your problems.
Every problem has a solution. Always be sure that your problems have been experienced by many other people and they got over them. Just like I told you in the last video, the intensity of problems is relative and suffering exists in every part of life. Then he started talking about exceptionalism with some words I liked, so let me tell you. He said today, we live in the age of social media, and social media keeps throwing messages about exceptionalism at us. He says every time you open your phone, you see celebrities, businessmen, the wealthy, and people who are truly considered exceptional. He says it gets to the point where you're convinced that if you're not exceptional, you're a total failure, and that view is completely wrong. You might not be exceptional, and not being exceptional doesn't mean anything. He says, no, on the contrary, life is about being a normal person. That perspective is actually crazy. I mean, I shouldn't be impressed when someone tells me to be a normal person, Cortexon, living a regular life, and that this is normal. I shouldn't say, wow, because that is normal. But the fact that I actually said, wow, I like what he's saying, is the biggest proof that what he's saying is true, that I actually started believing that exceptionalism is the only goal a person should be chasing in life. He says, I'm fine with any person having the right to be exceptional. Of course, exceptional in one area. He says, it's impossible to be exceptional in every area. And it's true, you might be successful in one or two fields and be completely ordinary in the rest. He says, any person has the right to be exceptional. This sentence is kind of self-contradictory because he says if everyone ends up being exceptional, then no one is special. The sentence is a little flawed, but there's a lot of truth to it. Being an exceptional person is cool, but if you're not, you're just a normal person, not a failure. Get rid of that idea in your head. It might not be a common idea, honestly, my friend, but I'm sure there are people like me whose perspective has been twisted a bit, and they started believing that exceptionalism is the goal, or that to be somebody. You have to be exceptional in life, or in one aspect of your life. My friend, I dare you to tell me how many degrees of exceptionalism you have, because honestly, I'm not sure. Try to rule out all the exceptional words I ruled out in this exceptionalism. Anyway, let me summarize the point of this book with the following simple sentence. First, be careful not to be like Jimmy, being a person who can't see their problems and their negative sides. Denying all your problems and negative sides will stop you from solving them, and if you don't solve them, you won't progress in life in any way. Second, be sure that there are two extremes. One extreme is there, and another extreme is also there. Someone who thinks they're way less than the world. James, my friend. Don't see yourself as above the world, and don't see yourself as beneath the world. Ever. Be sure that you're a normal person. Your problems are normal problems, and your suffering exists. And there are lots of people who go through the same suffering and the same problems you are facing, and they got over them. Just like Mark Manson says, my friend, you are absolutely not special. And always be sure that every problem has a solution. And you don't have to be an exceptional person. This is the last time I'm gonna say this, to think you're a successful person. You might just be an ordinary person, and that's totally normal. And that doesn't mean you're a failure in any area of your life. Don't let the messages on social media convince you that if you don't live a life like that, you're missing out on a lot. Not at all. You're a normal person. And this is the real and correct thing to say.
With this, the explanation of Chapter 3 of The Subtle Art of Not Giving AF*CK is done. Until I see you in Chapter 4, which I think is going to be really cool. I've already read 3 pages of it, and I think it's going to have a better message than this chapter. Godwilling.so, if you liked this explanation, share it with someone you care about. And if you liked the effort put into this
Video, give it a like. That'll help this video get around. Just like I said at the beginning of the video, reading without having to read. Also, subscribe to the channel and follow us, my friend, on our social media accounts. All the links will be in the description. The dose of Cortexon is over for today, my friend. Until I see you next week, God willing, with a better and more awesome dose. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your priceless time.